When you were working as a designer, were people expecting you to only stay in your lane?
Oh yeah, absolutely it is. I mean, in fact, that's in and of itself a challenge. We all get comfortable, and then that comfort works against the freedom of being expressive. The challenge of art is immensely personal, because every time you are putting it out there. I always tell the young people that the most challenging thing on the planet is a blank canvas. Just go for it. Let's see what you got.
Hello, everyone. This is Rodney Veal, and I'm the host of the podcast Rodney Veal's Inspired By. And I am sitting in Gary Hinsche's studio, who I'm going to introduce you to. We are recording in an art-making space. And I'm super excited because Gary is one of my favorite artists and one of my favorite people. He is a true lover of the community, a real lover of Dayton, Ohio, but also more importantly, he makes fabulous art, and he's always supporting other artists and making and championing causes that to allow more art to be made in our community. But more importantly, Gary has had a journey of a life, and I've gotten to know him, and he has a killer house, by the way, that I've actually been in. So I think it's one of the coolest designed houses I've ever been in. So I'm a fan. So
I'm flattered. Thank you.
You're very, very welcome. And so everyone, here's Gary Hinsche.
So, Rodney, thanks for inviting me. I really don't know where to begin.
I'll just ask you a question. I will start it.
Go for it.
I would say, the thing is starting from me because you have a very varied background. And the thing is, a lot of times it's not always how someone lands into fine art through graphic design. But I want to kind of start with the beginning. Like, what led you into graphic design? We're going way back in the time machine.
Really?
What started this journey?
Great question. We were just talking about this the other night, a bunch of us. I was, at a very young age, I was taking oil painting lessons from the time I was about 10 years old till, high school on Saturdays. And so I was sort of trained formally. I can't remember her name, but in L.A., I was painting seascapes and landscapes with oil paintings, and I was learning all of the tricks and the secrets and moving it, and I enjoyed it immensely, and had really thought, well, Hinsche, one day, you just need to be an artist. But now, something that everybody will relate to, my family said, well, don't be an artist. You can't make any money. You won't make a living. You need to do something that gives you a living. And that went on for a long time. In high school, I was scholarshiped to ArtCenter College of Design and Art in L.A. as a junior in high school, and started that program for 2 years and was introduced to graphic design.
Wow!
And that was seemingly more acceptable for the family. You're not going to be an artist, you're going to be a designer. So that was sort of the way that journey began as a graphic designer. ArtCenter at the time, I think it still is to this day, was one of the preeminent design schools in the United States, if not the world. They have a school in Basel, Switzerland, and now in Pasadena. A bunch of stories there, but it was funded by Detroit. It's one of the great industrial design schools. All of those cars that we drive, I always joke, were designed at ArtCenter.
Oh, that's wild.
College of Design. Yeah, if you walk through those halls at Ford and Chevy and Nissan and Toyota, they're full of ArtCenter graduates. So that was the money behind the school. was the industrial design part. But it's a terrific school, and it's amazing talent has come out of there over the years. So that's how I was introduced to it. So that was legitimate. I could go to work.
Isn't that the story of every parent?
That's what I meant. I thought everybody that's dealt with a career in art has been told, no, you can't do that.
I can actually tell you, Gary, from every interview I've had, and we're in season 3, everybody has heard a family member or a counselor in high school say, you might want to rethink that.
Right. Right.
So.
Right. How do you like eating? But I will say that a number of the folks that I grew up with in that period of time at Art Center and then on to college that became artists has done perfectly fine. So I would encourage everybody to stop listening to relatives. Follow your instincts. Follow your passions. Do whatever it is. So after college, I went to Long Beach State. That's a story too. I didn't wind up going to Art Center because I ran track all through school, and I ran track at Long Beach State. Art Center didn't have any track team or football team or anything else. So I thought, well, okay, I can do both.
I didn't realize you ran.
Yeah.
What was your like?
100, 220 and a quarter.
Wow.
Sprinter. I held the 100-yard dash record at the high school, the 220 dash record at high school. I was third man on the sprint team at Long Beach State, and it was good. It was a good part of I was able to accomplish both things. Plus, I think the Art Center at the time, although it was a bachelor's degree, they always recommended that you go to junior college or community college for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
To get all the academics out of the way, and then you just go there and you study design or art or whatever you're going to study. So I'm thrilled that I had the academic background too, which I think is imperative, because it isn't just what you can do creatively. It's also how you're taught to learn, and how you're taught to think, and how you're taught to address the problems of communicating through design and art and the like. That's sort of the short story on how I wound up as a designer. The passion always stayed with the art, and I believe to this day that art dictates in design. It isn't the other way around. The innovation has always come pretty much from the art side. We look at Mondrian, 50s Mondrian paintings. They became dresses. They became architectural structures.
Yeah,
they became, that's a really easy step. But so I've always been involved in art, even through the design side. I always had,
you were still actively painting, and
correct.
At the same time, you were learning this kind of the thing that's going to feed you, which is the graphic design. Right. That's pretty wild. I mean, I know we've talked about that too, because there is that art and design. There seems to be this artificial divide that people try to make it like, oh, it's one thing or the other, and they can't. No, because I don't believe that. I just firmly believe that it's all interrelated, and I absolutely agree with you about a liberal arts education. I feel absolutely like if you haven't read, I don't understand. That means you lack the imagination to see different worlds, which is what novels do. Even nonfiction can teach you some things in art, and so
sure. No
and so, we talk about this a lot. I mean, this is why I love talking to you, because I always feel like, yes, Gary gets it. Why doesn't the rest of the world get it? Sort of a deal.
Yeah. So those we're put on these journeys, and or missions, and sometimes we just don't have any control over it, so.
But you kind of found a way to combine them all in a way. I mean, so what was your first job out of college with that thing that's going to feed you?
Well, the first job was with a company in Hollywood, excuse me, called Porter, Goodman, and Cheatham. Alan Porter, David Goodman, and Frank Cheatham. Interestingly, Frank Cheatham was an incredible graphic designer and an amazing painter. And we struck up a relationship almost immediately because we both thought the same way, and he was very, very graphic. So that was a very short-lived period. Dave Goodman, who basically ran the company, was an incredible leader. He was not so much he was not a designer per se, but he got and understood how to run a design business. And his partner was Alan Porter in Chicago. And Alan Porter taught at the Chicago Art Institute. And most of the clients that they had came out of Chicago. We were doing stuff for tester paints and toys and models, and designing exhibits for Canada Dry and all of that stuff. So one day, Dave Goodman called me into his office, and I was downstairs. The office was outrageous. The office we were in the summer Taft house, President Taft's summer home in Hollywood, in the Hollywood Hills. It was
It's historic.
it was really, really a cool place.
Wow.
But so we just talking, and he said to me, granted, now I'm a young kid, really just out of school, and he said, well, hey, Gary, what do you want to do, or what do you want out of this? And I said, well, David, I want to be sitting on that side of the table. I pointed at him instead of this side of the table. I wanted to run my own deal one day. Wow. So anyway, and it was shortly after that I joined Robert Miles Runyon and Associates, which was one of the top graphic design firms in the nation at the time. Bob Runyon was a mentor, and everything was about excellence, period, the product. And I learned many lessons from him. Some of them, not all of them were great lessons to learn.
but what was that phrase? Everything's a teachable moment.
Yeah. I mean, he was a World War II vet. Went to ArtCenter, and out of the after the war, and he was a just a in a lot of sense a while. He told me one time. He said, I invested most of my money in women, wine, and fast cars, and the rest of it I wasted. And that's.
Well, he sounds like a character.
He was a character, and he played it really well too. He was an incredible salesman and had great taste, just remarkable taste, and I learned that what we did and how we did it was the end game, and he was tough. On everything. We'd have presentations. The first thing I worked on was an identity for Norton Simon. You probably all have heard the Norton Simon Museum.
Norton Simon Museum, but also I feel like wasn't he a major publisher?
Norton Simon?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Okay.
yeah, I don't remember how he made all his money, but he was a big deal in Southern California, a huge deal in Southern California. But I remember working on that. And this is long before computers. We're doing everything by hand. And we had a meeting scheduled to go over all these identity elements that we were designing, and we'd put them up on the conference wall. And Runyon would say, well, you know, it was Friday night. He leaves and he says, "All right, we're going to review all this Monday morning at 9 o'clock. Be ready." You know, so we had everything up on Monday, and again, I'm a young designer, and we walk into the conference room, and he walks in with this, you know, Melodondri 3-piece suit, coiffed to the tens, and with a cup of coffee in his hand and a sword, a saber, and we're all sitting there, and he walks up and down the conference room looking at the wall, and he takes the sword and he goes, "That's I want to see it tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock." That was
Wow, that talk about like I'm cutting you down, literally cutting you down with a sword.
yeah, and you know, I'm 23 years old and going, okay, but you know, you got through that, and then you understood that what he was doing. Another one of his things was 90% of anything we do was the last 10%. That's 90% of it, the last 10%. And he would squeeze that out of you. He would squeeze that, and you learned the attention to detail, the importance of the simplest things. So, so he was a big time mentor and a lifetime friend, and ultimately down the line, many years later, I bought him out of his company and owned the company and ran it. So, yeah.
Okay.
For 20 years. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but he was an amazing character, and I think a lot of his bravado was that. Bravado was not necessarily,
It wasn't really like his I don't want to say persona, but that sense of like he had a really brilliant idea, and he's absolutely right about the 90% squeezing it down to the 10.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that last little bit that produces the. We always talk about that last juicy moment in a rehearsal dance where you can get that movement that you weren't expecting.
One more time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it got you there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was the discipline that I learned early on, and it's stayed with me, well, forever. Yeah.
Oh my gosh! So you owned your own design firm.
Oh yeah.
For 20 years. So then, because I know we've talked, and I'm trying to remember the memories of like, okay, our conversations about things that you've worked on from a graphic design perspective, which is that's what shocked me. Like, you know, because when did you work on? Didn't you work on the LA Olympics?
Oh yeah, for sure. In fact, Robert Miles Runyon and Associates designed the graphic for the 1984 Olympics, the Stars in Motion, that were again phenomenal. I wasn't directly involved in that, but everything we did in that firm was he made it competitive. And I don't know if that happens in dance. I mean, you know, you're looking for a dancer, and you want them to compete, just like on a sporting event. I want the best.
Yeah.
Give me your best.
There is competition.
So he always presented it as competition, and yet at the end of the day, it was always collaborative. It was maybe you relate to that, being a choreographer. You understand the importance of having that dancer, and then you also understand the importance of that this thing has to work collaboratively with everybody. And and he was really good at that. I always said he wasn't. If he was here, we'd have a big argument about it. He wasn't the best designer, but he was the best director, period. He was the guy that could take it that last 10%. And he had a really challenging way of doing that. You just couldn't, you in that environment, you either stepped up or you didn't survive it. Wow. So it was instrumental in my life. Incidentally, on that same note, at the same time, there was an architect in L.A. by the name of Craig Elwood. And Craig Elwood and Bob Runyon were great friends, and I became a very close friend of Craig Elwood through Bob Runyon. And at one point it even got to be really silly because Craig wanted me to go to work for him, and he said, "Don't worry about Runyon, I'll take care of Runyon." But I never did that. But it was flattering. So Craig was this bigger than life guy as well. He was an incredible talent. He wound up designing ArtCenter in Pasadena. It's a bridge, and he's been compared to, he hated this, compared to Mies van der Rohe in Europe, who started building all these buildings out of steel. Well, Craig was doing it here, and he didn't have any. It wasn't like he was emulating anybody. It was his style here, but it irritated him that everybody said, "Well, you're just looking like and he wasn't." So he wasn't Mies van der Rohe. He was Craig Elwood, and it was Southern California. And right after the war in 1945, there was a magazine that was produced. I don't know if it's still produced or not, but it's called Arts and Architecture Magazine. Set up a program in the United States called the Case Study House. So architects were challenged by arts and architecture to come to them with designs that would stretch the concept of how we live. And most of those case study houses, for some strange reason, wound up being done in L.A. and became sort of the L.A. style at the time, and it turned the country on its ear. What the heck's happening there? With Craig Elwood designed many of them. A guy in Long Beach by the name of Killingsworth. Neutra, who is an incredible architect and very well known, and Charles Eames, all were designing these houses for arts and architecture, and they became very significant, and that launched Elwood's career. And then he started doing big office buildings so the reason I'm just probably taking longer than it should.
No. This is us. This is our conversation.
So
I love it.
So Craig wound up lecturing at Yale, and struck up a whole relationship with Joseph Albers. And Craig and I would have these conversations. Always impromptu, almost like what you and I meet.
We'll get together. We just start.
It's a Friday night, have a glass of wine, and hey, here's. But
let's talk about art and architecture and design and
so Craig started painting, and that also spurred me on to, all right, I got to study this more. I've got to paint more. I've got to understand more about what this is. So it goes back to the Bauhaus days where Joseph Albers came from, where we started this conversation. If you're a designer, you're an artist, you're an architect, you're a designer, you're an interior designer. There's nothing you can't design.
Absolutely.
The whole idea of Bauhaus was
it was everything. It was like it was living. It was like down to just designing diapers in a different
exactly.
way. I mean, absolutely, yeah.
So that also had a pretty profound impact on me and how I approached not only my design, but and you've seen all of my work. My work is very architectural.
We're sitting surrounded by it, and
it's very graphic. And I tell you, everything I do is designed.
Yeah.
So I didn't walk away from
Design.
graphic
You
design.
just
I've let it
merge
yeah
and synthesize it into the art making
Right.
practice, which it's a really interesting thing because I always feel like that's a conversation that always happens in the arts. Like I remember going to grad school and auditioning, and they said, "Well, why doesn't your work reflect your degree in visual arts and political science?" I said, "Well, there's not a lot of political discourse in a ballet. You lift the girl, she's a bird." I mean, I don't have a lot of room but I'm willing to learn, and so then it becomes and that's where that experience, we talk about that, like you have to have these different life experiences. It informs everything that goes forward. It can't be just one thing. It's got to be a multitude of things, which drives everyone around us crazy, I'm sure. But they actually, like, when you were working as a designer, where people were expecting you to only stay in your lane, and then vice versa, the same thing with art making?
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely it is. I mean, in fact, that's in and of itself a challenge, because we all get comfortable, and then that comfort works against the freedom of being expressive in a way, because I can do that. Yeah, I've done that. I know, I understand it. So it's the challenge of art is immensely personal, because every time you are putting it out there, and I would say, I think you need to have some pretty tough skin, because it's yeah. I always tell the young people the most challenging thing on the planet is a blank canvas.
Yeah.
Just go for it. Let's see what you got. But yeah. So later on, after all of this, you asked about the Olympics. Yeah, we had. Man, there were essentially three firms and an architectural firm that did and basically created what the look and the feel of the 1984 Olympics were. Architecturally, John Jurdy of the Jurdy Partnership in LA was, again, one of these amazing talents, great guy. But he essentially was designing malls for Kenneth Hahn out of LA, and he reinvented the whole mall concept. And a sidebar in that story, he also told. I was in this meeting. When he was telling it wasn't Kenneth Hahn, but it was another mall developer. He said, first of all, you must understand that the life of a mall is going to be 10 years. It's done in 10 years. You have to reinvent that in 10 years, because nobody believed that. And look at what's happening to all these malls today.
I love it.
So here's the guy saying, "Hey,
he's like, you've got to reinvent.
These aren't monuments. These are shopping experiences. You're creating an experience."
Right. And we see that malls now have figured it, like they're starting to try to evolve, but then they always get behind the times. It's like, like I always use the example of, Easton is a walking concept mall. Let's do that everywhere. But then you do it, and then some are successful and some are not. And it's like not taking into account like the geography and the people and the culture of a community, because it's not monolithic. Every place is different.
I'm Bonnie Miles, Membership Coordinator of CET. Thank you for listening to Rodney Veals Inspired By. This podcast is a production of CET and Think TV, two local PBS stations. As PBS stations, the work we do online, on air, and in the community is supported by listeners like you. If you're enjoying the show and would like to support our work, please consider becoming a member at cetconnect.org or thinktv.org. Plus, when you sign up to donate at least $5 a month, you'll get access to special members-only streaming videos on the PBS app through Passport. Learn more at cetconnect.org or thinktv.org.
If you're enjoying this conversation, The Art Show, also hosted by Rodney Veal, is available to stream anytime from anywhere on YouTube or the PBS app.
And so, I mean, was LA like I'm kind of curious because there's this notion of like, you know, like you're doing design, you're working in these circles with these amazing people. I mean, especially in doing being on the team to design the kind of look of the graphics, which is another question I have, because wayfinding signage is a real thing. People ignore it at all times, and it's usually to their detriment to the organization that didn't put a sign out that said arrow this way, but do it in a nice way. Was that just because of that? Was LA always this kind of hotbed of the new idea? Like, I always envisioned it as being like the hotbed of the new idea, and the new sort of like everybody's working in their space and coming into close proximity.
There's a book out that's called Rock Me on the Water. I forget who the author is, but and they highlight the 70s, the early 70s, but that how LA changed everything. The music industry moved to LA from New York, you know, with the Troubadour and you know, the people that came out of the Troubadour, the Jackson Browne, Linda Ronstadt, what are the guys? I mean, it was prolific, and so the record companies all start, and that was a monumental change. The politics changed in California, you know, of course, being, you know, a liberal state, but it had a significant change. The book is a quick read. It's terrific, and then the arts started. Okay, in Los Angeles, in a little gallery, the Ferris Gallery in Los Angeles, changed the art scene, not just in LA, but it had an impact that was nationally. It is considered one of the 10 most important galleries in art history. Wow. This little gallery, the Ferris Gallery, and it was started by, I can't remember his name right now, but it was started by Kienholz. Ed Kienholz was, you know, nobody would show his work, so he basically said, well, I'm going to start my own gallery. And he shows his work, and he didn't know anything about running a gallery, so he hooked up with this fellow from New York, Irving Bloom, and in Irving Bloom, nobody knew who any of these artists were. So it's like nobody, you know, today they're all like household names. Andy Warhol's first solo show was at the Ferris Gallery in LA.
Wow.
And I believe that was early 60s, 64, something like that. But the other artists that really came out of that whole era in Los Angeles were Ed Moses, who he's not necessarily a household word, but a terrific, incredible, important artist. John Altoon, Kenny Price, Billy Al Bankston, Jasper Johns, Frank Stella, Roy Lichtenstein. I mean, the place.
So you're like it was hopping.
It was happening. I didn't know it was happening. Nobody else knew it was happening, but it was happening. And so history looks back. So all this was happening in Los Angeles and turning LA. The spotlight was on LA. So the architecture through the case studies, the art through the Ferris Gallery, the food scene all of a sudden began to be incredible. Little guys that nobody knew, like Wolfgang Puck. Who the heck was? You're going to go to Wolfgang Puck's? Who's Wolfgang Puck, right? Well, he changed the way we eat. I mean, you know,
so you're like, yeah.
You know, so
you're in this world that was forming. Like,
exactly. It was all happening simultaneously. That's what this book's about. It's just how influential and what happened at that period of time. So the arts, the architecture, the food, the politics, the music, all was happening there. And then going even so further, and the whole group that. Oh, let me back a minute. So there were 4 firms. John Jurdy was the guy that came up with how do we present this stuff, because the Olympic Committee had run out of time. They had a graphic, the identity, designed by Robert Miles Runyon and Associates. Keith Bright of Bright Strategic Design designed the icons and John Jurdy. How do you do all this in a year? How are you going to put all this together? His architecture firm figured that out, because what they did, everything was built on scaffolding. The whole structure of all of these events, signing, everything was built on scaffolding. And then Deborah Sussman of Sussman Prasia developed a color palette and a system. She called it a kit of parts. So instead of looking at individual venues, let's design a system of elements that we can pick and choose and move around, and they become, to your point, they become identification elements. So that you've got a 50 or 45-foot scaffolding, and all these graphics are coming off of it, so that it just said Olympics. And then we were tasked with we designed a banner program that I always called it. We gift wrapped the city of Los Angeles. It was at the time, I don't know if it's ever been done, the largest banner program ever done in the United States. Period. And and it took off like wildflower. And I could go through the details of what that took, but we did that. And then we were doing all the arts venues, which you would have loved, Rodney.
Oh, I know. Oh, you know me. I'm like, which is amazing to me, because when we talked about that, because I'm researching something right now about that a lot of people don't know, is that in the early part of the 20th century, there was an arts component to the Olympics where they were awarding medals.
Yeah, no,
and so one of the
big part to this day now. Every city does.
Everyone does it as presenting theirs, but they were actually giving medals.
Wow.
And so it was essentially George Bellows received a bronze medal for his painting, and he's the one that does they did those kind of realistic, not realistic, but kind of like ashcan artists, boxing matches.
Oh, very cool.
Like those, and really, really, really cool stuff. And so it's this notion of LA being like all these things you're talking about, which is absolutely true, that came out of that, and you're making, you're doing this banner system that how you created an identity for a city, in essence, to kind of rebirth itself as truly a global force.
Yeah.
The Olympics has that kind of power,
Right.
but it has that kind of power because of design. It has that kind of power because of art. It has that, people be having a vision, so to speak.
So when when we got the call to do this banner program, we had no idea what it would entail, nor did the Olympic Committee. We got a call from Larry Klein. Larry Klein reported to Harry Usher, who was the number 2 guy in the Olympic Committee, and Larry Klein, who's another really great guy, an interesting guy, great story too with him. But he said, hey, we want to do a banner program. Can you guys do it? Sure. So the first thing we had to do is we went to the city to get we needed to know, how many light poles are there in the city of Los Angeles. So sure, we can design that. And we had to determine, how we had to know how many light poles that we could incorporate, that we could use in the city. So we asked the city if they could provide us with that information. And they said, well, no, we don't have a record. We don't have any idea. So the first thing we had to do, we counted and documented every light pole in the city of Los Angeles.
Oh my
and we had teams that went out to certain areas, and one of the, you always get criticisms, right? Gee, Rodney, how come you didn't use this move in that thing? Well, you always get.
There's always something that's never right with someone. It's always
Exactly.
this. It's
Exactly.
like, well, I would have done it differently. I'm like,
Really,
well,
did you really want those tights on? But so the criticisms were that, well, the banners are too small. But what people didn't understand, we had to design the banners to the wind loads of the smallest light post, not the most robust. Otherwise, half of those would have been blown down, the posts and everything. But anyway, the point is, the criticism comes with no knowledge. So anyway, when we understood how many poles and how many banners were needed, and then how much time was left before the Olympics were, that currently at the time it was like, I don't remember the exact number, but it took about 20 minutes to hang a banner, and there's no way that we could have hung those banners around the city of Los Angeles. It would have been ready a year later. I mean, there was an impossibility. So we didn't, but we contracted and had a system designed so that we could hang a banner on a pole in something like 30 seconds, 40 seconds. Wow. And now that same system is used everywhere. You see them in Dayton. There's these little clamps that go on the pole, they come out, the banner goes on, but we had, so we figured that out and got this system going. We got the banner. Then the other problem was everybody, I know everybody, people were stealing his banners off the poles like crazy. So the budget had been blown and everything else, and Harry Usher said, I don't care what it costs, keep those banners going up. People want them, they can have them. It's all good. We wound up almost not experiencing any of the Olympic events, and we could have gone to all of them because we were continually hanging banners and getting banners done, banners made, and running out of material. How are we going to get this done? So it was a whole incredible experience.
wow.
So yeah, we had a studio. Actually, the Olympic Committee had a studio downtown that was the design center, and those four firms I just talked about, Jurdy, Sussman, us, and Keith Bright, all had meetings there and workspace there on an ongoing basis for a solid year to get all this stuff done and organized and put together. There was so much talent involved in this. It was not at all a one person deal. So it was.
Wow. Here's you're part of like the legend of the LA Olympics, because I feel like that was the first modern Olympics that we all paid attention to. Do you know? I mean, in a sense, and it was shockingly so well done. And there is a Dayton connection, because if I remember correctly, didn't Edwin C. Moses win his first Olympic gold medal in LA? So
Yeah.
I mean, someone will probably test me on that knowledge and history who listening to the podcast, but I'm pretty sure.
Well, nobody would.
Pretty sure it was.
Ed Moses was as good as it gets.
Yeah.
Period. Yeah, for sure.
Phenomenal runner.
But so after the Olympics, we almost.
How do you top that? I mean, really, how do you go from the Olympics? I'm
I don't know. Do you want more on the Olympics?
No, well, no. I'm like, no. How do you? No, I'm just saying, like, as an observation, how do you top doing this big, massive, world attention, all eyes on experience as a design firm and as a designer? Where do you go from there? What's the next project? How do you?
Well, we had we had gained a lot of notoriety and not just us. I mean, a lot of these firms, that all of a sudden we were on the radar now, and we started getting calls from. Somebody saw an article in CA magazine about our firm. We got a call from Korea, and next thing you know, I'm on an airplane I was in Martha's Vineyard with the family. Had to fly back to LA in an airplane to go to a meeting in Seoul, Korea, to meet with the president of Kumho Corporation. This is one of these huge Korean companies, Kumho Tire.
All right.
They own Oceania Airlines, and they were developing this resort south of Seoul, and they brought us out there to look at the resort and hired us to do all the identity, all the branding, all the graphics for the resort. And then we wound up doing, off of that, several projects in Korea. For Samsung. Samsung people don't know this. There's no reason they should, but Samsung was producing and designing and building their own car. And we introduced that car. We did all the graphics, all the brochures, and everything for this car that'd be sold in Korea. And the reason nobody knows about it is because after about a year, the government shut it down because all these Korean companies, they were breaking these big companies up. So
really,
what do you want to do? You want to be an electronics company? You can't be an electronic company, a resort company, an airline, a tire company, and a car manufacturer. They were breaking these companies up so that they could manage their growth of Korea. But yeah, I mean, it was pretty wild. So we started getting involved in more and more environmental graphic stuff. We were asked to do 5,000 square feet at the National Holocaust Museum in Washington D.C.
Wow. to
correspond with the 1988 Olympics. So because they wanted to tell the story of how Hitler used the 1936 Olympics to legitimize the Nazification of Germany.
Wow.
And of course that's all. But so we got into that. We wound up working with historians and designing this 5,000 square feet, and then redesigning it to a much smaller size, and it traveled around the world. I mean, that's
powerful stuff.
And they wanted us because we'd had the Olympic experience,
mm-hmm.
and we were doing all this environmental stuff. It was pretty amazing. It was pretty incredible. So, fast forward, other important people in my life.
Yeah, because we've talked. I mean, but who else is important in your life at this point?
So again, because of the group that we were in, the people that we were socializing with, they were friends. They some were colleagues. They all were friends, but it was great. We'd have there was a group of us. All of them, I could tell stories about every one of them that are just amazing. But Keith Bright, Jay Chiat of Chiat Day, Charlie White, who basically conceived and he designed Bellagio. He designed I don't know, three or four resorts. He didn't do them architecturally, but going back earlier, John Jurdy was the architect, but Charlie White was the whole. He invented invented these places. I mean,
Yeah, like as experiences, as
Yeah,
the
exactly.
totality of the experience, like you,
Exactly.
that concept of, which is really fascinating because it is that concept that's kind of still with us today of design, where you design it all, like literally, it's like from the curb
Right.
to the doorman's outfit to the
Right.
letterhead to the where the screens are, like, plants, everything towards the singularity of the experience.
So at this same time, as this little group of designers and artists and architects and everything, Frank Gehry walks into the place, we wound up doing a number of projects, a number of Frank Gehry projects. We weren't working for Frank Gehry. We were working for the client. It was his client. But he would say to us, well, we need to develop. They would say, the client would say, what are we going to do with the graphics? Well, here's a couple firms you need to talk to. One of them was us, and so more times than not, we wound up working on all these Frank Gehry projects. So Frank is the one that got me going with plywood.
Really, with
Yes.
the pioneer.
Plywood.
How did that come? Like, because he does incorporate as an architect.
He had this thing that we're going to only use natural materials, nothing artificial. He had done Chiat Day's office in Santa Monica. That it was just outrageous. The whole place was done in plywood, and you've seen my plywood walls.
Right, I'm talking about Gary's home because I've fallen in love with it.
So
and
then all this plywood sculpture that I do, I started, that came from him, and he was also, obviously a very significant architect, but when talking to him, he considers himself an artist, and he is. He's an artist.
He absolutely is.
And you look at those buildings; they're sculptures. They're not buildings like you would, so he had certainly a profound influence on me and how I approached my art as well. So I wasn't like super close with him, but I would say that we were friends, and I've lost contact with him since being here in Dayton, but and he's older than dirt now, and he's got to be 90.
Wow.
But he's still going strong.
He's still going strong, what I love is the fact that there are Frank Gehry buildings in Ohio. There's one in Cincinnati on UC's campus.
There's one up in Cleveland at Case Western.
Case Western, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah.
so folks.
Yeah.
That's what I love about the fact of this LA influence, and so it always blows over because having known you, like, what got you to Dayton, Ohio? I mean, I'm just like, because how do you go to Dayton, Ohio?
Okay.
Not that I'm not dissing on Dayton, Ohio. Please do not write letters or anything that might. No, I mean it's a journey. I mean we that's the whole purpose of this.
At the height of all of this, I think it was 2000, right around 2000, 2001. Harry Usher, who I'd mentioned earlier, was the number 2 guy at the Olympic 1984 Olympic Committee. We became good friends. So it was wherever Harry went, we had a new business. So I got a call one afternoon from Harry saying, Hinsche, we're putting this. We have this opportunity. We're putting this company together. Can you meet us? I met with him and actually him and Peter Huberoff. So GE Cap had purchased all these catalog companies. There were hundreds of them. That would produce dollhouses or paper flowers or all these hobbies that were sent out in catalogs all across the country and people would buy the
materials to
yeah. So and it included sports memorabilia and sports stuff. Baseball signed by Lou Gehrig or a jersey. Whatever. Sports.
so it was like
So the world was changing with the advent of the whole shift to digital and the catalogs were not particularly smart idea. So GE told Harry and Peter that if they could turn, they were losing $140 million a year. If they could turn that company black, they could have it. They want out of it. They just want it off the books. They want it clean. So Harry said, "Okay, we'll do that," and he rapidly got rid of all those catalogs, and just kept just the sports stuff. And then he set up a network with DirecTV, and he had licenses from all the sports venues, the NHL, the NASCAR, pro basketball, pro football, pro baseball, and we started producing. We were producing, I think it was 6 or 7 catalogs every 2 months, and not in small quantities, like millions, hundreds of thousands of. Probably hundreds of thousands, not millions, but we're so and he was rapidly changing it over to, also we were going to get rid of the catalogs because everything was going to go through two venues. One venue was in Times Square, and the other venue was in L.A. at Universal Studios, Studio Walk, which Charlie White designed, by the way. He designed Universal Studio Walk. And he was in the process of moving it from Secaucus, New Jersey.
Okay. Secaucus, New Jersey. Wow.
Back to L.A. In the meantime, he's working out of my office. And we were on a $134,000 a month retainer with GE Cap, and we had added people, we added space, we had to get rid of all the computers and all the software, because if you look back at that period of time, 2000, everything was pirated. You didn't know whether you had, and we couldn't take a chance of being sued or putting them in a position to being sued, and you had DirecTV involved, and So we're just jamming along with all this business, and on a Monday morning, I got a call, and that Harry had died on a treadmill in Secaucus, New Jersey. He got up in the morning, went downstairs at the hotel, and was running on a treadmill and had a massive heart attack. Died. And so a week or two, it was devastating. A week or two later, I get a call from a very polite, nice gentleman, and the conversation went something like this. "Hi, Mr. Hinsche, we're really sorry for your loss. We know you were close friends with Harry Usher, and we're really sorry about that. But I'm here to tell you that we're not going to pay you. We're bankrupting that company, and you could sue us, and you would win." So we've had all these contracts. He said, "But I have a building in Manhattan full of attorneys, and I can keep it in the courts for 10 years. Can you do that?" That was something that you cannot even fathom in your life. A phone call like that. I had personally guaranteed all the computers, all the leases, everything. So I got a call from this company here in Dayton, Ohio, Sabatino Day. Greg Sabatino called and said, "Well, I got your name, and I'd never met him, didn't know him from Adam. What are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, I had no idea what to do. Obviously I talked to my attorneys, and then my attorneys all said, you need to bankrupt the company, bankrupt it, because you can't afford, you got to bankrupt this thing." And I didn't do that, because a lot of the people that that I worked with and were personal friends and associates, long-term relationships, and I just figured I would pay everybody what is owed. So, long and short of it was that we had several meetings, and Sabatino said, "Well, let's just put the companies together, and we'll figure it all out. We'll get it," because they had the same phone call. He had the same phone call. "Gee, Mr. Sabatino, we're really sorry. We're not paying you." Wow. So then it wasn't a couple of years later, or a year later, that he said, "Well, why don't you go to Dayton and we'll run the creative out of Dayton, and we'll downsize the LA office because it was costing too much money and everything else." So that's how I wound up in Dayton, Ohio.
Sabatino Day, which, I mean, as a native Daytonian, that name was there. It was everywhere. That's because they were a big company. They were big,
Yeah.
big, you know.
Yeah, Gary Day is a dear friend. It's just been wonderful with the people, and getting to know you, same thing. I mean,
Well, exactly. I'm grateful that I'm like going week. I can't even remember how we met. I mean, to be honest with you, how did we meet? Did we meet through the art show?
I don't remember either.
We just, it's like we were never friends. Not friends. I guess it's like I had so much.
But it was instant.
It was instant. Yeah.
I mean, I just remember that it was instant.
It was like, I like this guy. I just like this guy. We just,
right.
Yeah, because I think it's our philosophies. I think it's our similar philosophies. And I love, like you talked about, you weren't going to just take the money or do something and run and leave everybody else hanging. You were always thinking about, like, you know what? I have friendships and connections and people who depend on, you weren't going to let those folks down. And I think it's that you have such integrity as a human being. I mean, no, seriously, you really do. And I was like, I felt it. I was like, yeah. An authenticity.
Well, thank you for that too. And it was just, I'm sorry. It was just the right thing to do.
It is. That was absolutely the right thing to do. And that's what our conversations are about. We talk about Dayton because of, the thing is the fact that we're working together with this group called Epic. And it's a group of us just trying to do cool things in the city and involve as many people as we can and inspire and connect and engage and educate and get folks to kind of see that, you can do amazing things in the Midwest in a city the size of Dayton, Ohio. And that the people who, for whatever reason, if they're not a native Daytonian, they become Daytonians by design or by the journey, and that this is fertile ground.
Yeah. So it's that stuff that keeps me going. I mean, we started this gallery, and
When did you guys start the gallery? I can't remember.
I think Dane and I were talking about this the other day. I think now it's about 6 years ago. But to your point, her vision, her image about this gallery was, what can we give back to this community? What can we do to support the visual arts in this community? For me, it was far more selfish. I wanted my art in some of the big, the big art fairs in Miami and L.A. and all that, and you had to have a gallery represent, and there
which a lot of people don't understand that this larger requires you have to have some components before they'll even entertain looking your direction.
So my goal was, going back to Ed Kinel's, we'll start a gallery. And Dane and I, neither one of us knew anything about how to run a gallery. And I naively, I can remember myself saying, well, we'll figure it out. It just can't be that hard. So many, 5 years later, she's been amazing.
No, she has.
Incredible. She's a gallerist. She's a curator.
And she has a compassion for the community.
And a passion.
And a passion. A compassion and a passion. But
going back to Epic. Epic is because of Dana Wiley.
Yeah, absolutely.
So-
And the thing is, but it's also because of you, and it's because of John and Lori Doherty and Jamie and Rich. And I mean, there's a lot of people involved in this kind of group of folks.
And nobody asking for anything.
That was the thing. It's like we found the whole premise is not, oh, am I going to gain all these? No, is the community going to be better?
Right.
Is it better than the way we left it? And because we talked about what is our legacy?
Right.
Is our legacy going to be? Because I have a phrase. It's on my dry erase board at work, and it says, "Chase excellence, not gold." And I live that mantra.
Right.
It doesn't matter because I also have the humor of the fact that my mother is the most humbling human being on the planet. When we won our first regional Emmy for the TV show, I called her excited, and she said, "Well, that's nice." And she goes, "So when are you coming out for dinner?" And I said, "Mom, I'm going on vacation after the show." "Oh, okay. Well, we'll see you when you get back from vacation. Love you." Click. So my mom will be mad about that, but that in and of itself told me everything I needed to know. It's not about that. It was the fact that I was working with Lynette Carlino and Richard Nordstrom and John Papp, and the station having this idea of let's promote art and let's promote art and culture in Southwest Ohio. And it was a win-win scenario. And it wasn't about me becoming a TV star because that was not on the bingo card of life, right? And it points to the journey. It points to the conversation that we're having, that your journey it's not linear. It goes, how you go from designing and all of a sudden it's this thing that then says, okay, you know how to come to Dayton, Ohio, here's a place. And you're making this, but it's your work, when we look at your work, and I'm looking at it, it's informed by what you're telling us. And that's really fascinating to me. I think when you get to see Gary's work, you're going to see, and you listen to this podcast, you can sense there's a deeper contextual, subtextual story. It's never just what's on the surface, which I think it comes through in your work. And that's why I do kind of remember looking at your artwork and just being drawn, fascinated. I would just stare and I look and I see that I go, this is more than just I'm mapping things out on a geometric grid. This has to do with something, the grid is above a story of life.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm a fanboy. Sorry. So I know, Gary, I'm like one of those guys fanboys. I fanboy of you.
It's gratifying and greatly appreciated, but it's fun. It's fun doing this. It's fun talking about this. It's fun because rarely do you really hear a life experience, or so I mean it's a journey is a great word. It's not linear, and it isn't. So many of us make the mistake of planning our mission or our vision, as opposed to letting the mission find you. So you want to make a plan, watch God laugh.
Well, yes, and I'm laughing because
that's the point. Let the mission find you.
Yeah,
you have to be open to that. But
that's a tough one. That's a tough. I think a lot of reason why people don't let the mission find them is fear. The fear of letting go. When you described it as visually opening up, and I believe in that. An opening means you're embracing, that you're allowing an embrace, and the embrace may be uncomfortable. but it's a worthy embrace. So you got to be, you got to kind of be prepared for it.
Get vulnerable.
Yeah.
That's what it's about. Stop feeling comfortable. Comfort is, I don't know, it's a dead end. I mean, just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's our thing. Yeah. So you touched upon something, but I want you to have the honest to God last word in this podcast before I sign off. What advice, because we're talking about the journey, what advice would you give to someone who is considering this notion of art and creativity and it being a part of their life and them being a part of their community? What would be your advice to them?
That really tests a person. That's not an easy path or a preferred path. Per the advice I got as a young man and that you got as well. No, you got to. You can't make a living doing. You have to know. You have to know what you want. You have to know what you're willing to give up to achieve that, and you have to know that it ain't going to be easy. I guess. I mean, I don't know. I've thought about that a lot, and I have given advice a lot, only to find out that it was. I mean, coming away feeling, well, that was pretty superficial. It's pretty hard to be profound about that question, because it's a cliche. It's all about hard work. Well, it's not all about hard work. It's also about what's important to you.
And there we have it. This is why I wanted you on the podcast. So,
Gary Day used to say, I'm probably going to misquote this, but if you're going to have a point of view, take a point of view. I mean, it's got to have some meat in it and something behind it. It's not like, well, I believe this. Really? What are you doing? I'm not quoting that correct, but the point is,
yeah.
So the advice would be,
but you live it. You embody it. That's the thing. You live it. Like that phrase, walk the talk. I mean, it's not that cliche, tropey sort of phrase. You walk the talk. So it's evident. And you don't have to exceed that point of view. It's like, it's very clear if you as a viewer or an audience member is paying attention. And it's right there. It's right there. It's right there in the work. It's right there when someone meets you. It's there.